Kia ora koutou. My name is Emma Thompson and I am one of the co-leads of Te Aka Wāhine at ACC, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to today's session. To start us off, I'll just do the ACC karakia in Whaia te tika, Whaia te pono, Whaia te aroha, mō te oranga tangata, kia puta ki te whaiau, ki te ao marama, haumie, huie, taike. Cool, and now I will pass to my co-lead, Amy.
Kia koutou katoa. Thank you, Emma, for opening our session with karakia, and thank you everyone joining us today. It is wonderful to have so many people with us for ACC Te Aka Wāhine event, Wāhine Navigate in the Era of Change. So the event comes from a very simple but important reflection. Change is showing up everywhere in our workplace, in our economy, in the technology shift, in our finance, in our careers, and in our personal lives. So, and for many Wāhine, we are not navigate just one change at a time. Often we are carrying many changes at once, personally, professionally, and sometimes quietly. So today's session is not just about listening to inspiring leaders, although we are very lucky to have an incredible panel with us today. It is also about creating space to pause, to reflect, to learn and connect. So our hope for you today is to, when you leave this session, to have three things in mind: be a little bit more confident, a little bit more clarity, and a stronger sense that we do not have to navigate change alone. So we are incredibly grateful to have our speakers for their generosity in sharing their time, experience, expertise, and insights with us today. Before I hand over, I also want to acknowledge the work that has gone through in bringing this event together. A huge thank you to our sponsor of Te Aka Wāhine, Megan May, my co-lead Emma, our MC Ingrid, Gwen, Wellington Reps, DIA, our speakers, and everyone who helped promote and support this session across ACC and our wider Wāhine networks. So I'm now delighted to hand over to our wonderful MC, Ingrid Strange. Ingrid is the account director at Mysuper, who will guide us through the event session today, and we will start with speaker reflection. Ingrid, over to you.
Thanks, Amy. I'm really grateful to be involved in today's session and was really delighted when you asked me to help you with it. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us to discuss this really important topic. Change is something that we're all constantly travelling through, and while it can feel uncomfortable, I personally like to meet it with a bit of curiosity and some positivity. Anyone who knows me here at ACC knows that a positive spin on things is where I like to be. I often ask myself, what can I take from this? How can I break things down and make things more manageable to cope with the change that I might be seeing at work, at home, and anything that I'm interacting in? Especially as Wāhine, finding ways to lower stress and support ourselves through any type of change, I think is so important. When we shift our perspective, the moments of uncertainty can become powerful opportunities to grow. We can move forward with confidence. So today's conversation is about creating a space to pause, as Amy mentions, to reflect, to hear from a wonderful group of leaders who have each brought a different lens to the table today to help us to navigate through change with confidence, clarity, and connection. We're fortunate to have our panel who are made up of representatives from leadership, economics, finance, technology, and I'd like to introduce each one. So Megan Main, Chief Executive here at ACC. Welcome, Megan. Megan brings a really deep experience in public sector leadership, health system transformation, and leading through complexity, including previous leadership roles at MB and in health partnerships. Olivia Sutton, Head of Private Bank, Auckland and Family Office at BNZ. Welcome, Olivia. Olivia offers a perspective on financial confidence, long-term planning, and helping individuals and families make informed decisions through uncertainty. I'm also joined by Christina Leung, CFA, Deputy Chief Executive, Auckland, and Principal Economist at NZIER. Welcome, Christina. Christina brings expert insights into economic trends, business conditions, and wider forces shaping Aotearoa's future. And also Samar, Alrayyes, Account Director of New Zealand Government and Defence at SAP New Zealand, and co-chair of TechWomen. Welcome, Samar. Samar brings a strong lens on digital transformation, future skills, and women's leadership in technology. So to begin, I'd like to invite each of our speakers to share a short opening reflection. We've prepared them and asked each speaker to speak for about 5 to 6 minutes to touch on what change they are seeing right now, what that means for Wāhine, what practical advice they would perhaps offer, and one takeaway for us today. So I'll keep things moving as we go through, and we'll look to hear from everybody and have time for a panel discussion with some questions and themes. And if we have time at the end, we'll hopefully be able to address a couple of questions from you as our audience. So to start us off, Megan, would you like to share your reflections?
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Ingrid, and thank you, Amy and Emma, and everyone else who's been involved in putting this lovely hour event together today. It's look, I suspect there's going to be some consistent themes through this whole hour around some of the big changes that are going on and how we respond to them. I guess the first thing I would say is change is constant. It feels different when you're in it to when you're thinking about it as something either ahead or behind. But I think the first thing I would say is it's everywhere. It always has been. I do think it feels more intense when you're in the thick of it. But if you think back to the changes for each of us over our lifetime, and possibly, if we think to our grandparents, the changes over their lifetimes, it's enormous how things continue to shift. I'm old enough to remember the advent of the internet, the mobile phone. These seemed like pretty big deals at the time. And things just continue to shift and change. I think one of the changes that I'm feeling, certainly at ACC, is the demographic shift. We've talked for a long time about the sort of the bow wave of the aging population, but we're all literally getting older every day, and we are the demographic shift. And that's playing out obviously in a lot of very public conversations about what it means for retirement planning and funding as a country for the generation that will age through over the next sort of 30 or 40 years. And maybe when you're in that bulge, you'd notice it more acutely. But that is quite a shift for us as a country, as a society, as an economy, and I think it's colouring a lot of other conversations at the moment. It's a great example of something we can't ignore, we can't avoid it, we have to face into it, and think about what opportunities it creates for how we're going to work, live, support family members, support communities, into the future. I don't have the answer to that. I don't think anyone has the answer to that sort of tied up with a bow, but it is one of the things that's really driving some very live conversations. And I know my colleagues on the panel will no doubt talk about the technology shifts we're seeing as well. For us at ACC, we're going through a performance turnaround, which means that we're really focused on getting injured people back to work, back to independence faster. We're doing a lot of work around sort of early intervention and really good case management. But the thing that we've got as a bit of an accelerant on that is that we're doing it in an era of really emergent technology, generative AI, a lot more automation ability, a lot better ability to join up data across systems. We've got, you know, data in the cloud that we didn't have before. And so that to me is a real opportunity to do it better than ever. We talk about wanting to get back to best performance on people returning to work. But we've got these extra tools this time that we just didn't have. You know, last time ACC was at best ever performance, we literally had, I don't know, 30 or 40 branches around the country that each had their own spreadsheets and data, and it wasn't joined up across the country. So there's real opportunities in that for being able to provide a better, more targeted service to people, you know, from a public service point of view. In terms of what it means for Wāhine in particular, the thing that I jumped straight to was that this sort of sandwich generation that a lot of women become, and men as well, but you know, traditionally a lot of that responsibility has fallen to women, which is where you're sort of stuck between aging parents and kids that are still dependent on you and everyone else as well. And so I think that's a thing for women, but also the technology confidence gap. And, you know, there's always been this challenge to get girls and women to feel really confident using technology, being technologically literate and savvy. And you know, as the technology moves ahead, I think it's more imperative than ever that we set girls and young women and ourselves up. And so for me, you know, AI wasn't a thing when I was born. And so I've made a real effort to educate myself. I'm actually in week 7 of an 8-week online AI business strategy course, which goes beyond how to prompt and actually is helping me to think about how do you actually bring AI and generative AI into your overall business strategy. And so back to something, Ingrid, you said at the beginning is, you know, I think the answer is to stay curious, stay open-minded, look after yourself, but be open to what's ahead. And that's probably the best way to embrace any sort of change, but in particular, the pace of change we're seeing at the moment. And my key takeaway is probably, you know, that point that it can feel really big when you're in it, but there is always some opportunity in that challenge. And so just, yeah, be curious and look for the opportunity.
That's great. Thank you, Megan. Olivia, can we move over to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And kia ora, everybody. I'm Olivia. It's fantastic to be here today. Really excited to talk to you all. So for me, look, I've been in financial services for 19 years, and I have the privilege of leading our private banking team. And I work for BNZ. And look, on the surface, my role is about supporting high net worth clients and ultra high net worth clients and leading those teams. You know, but my role is much more about people than it is about money. You know, every day, you know, I get the privilege to work alongside business owners, entrepreneurs, families, individuals who are making significant life decisions. And so, you know, what I'm seeing is behind every investment, every business sale, every succession plan, there is actually a person there navigating uncertainty, balancing competing priorities, and really just trying to make the best decisions for themselves and those people that they actually care about. So for me, I guess like leading a team has, you know, taught me that the same is actually true there for our people. Like everyone is navigating change in different ways. So I think, you know, if I think about leadership, it isn't about having all the right answers. I think it's about creating confidence when certainty doesn't actually exist. And it's about helping people move forward, even when the path isn't necessarily clear. And then if I'm thinking about the change that I'm seeing right now in, you know, in finance, I think probably the biggest change is actually it's the rate that we're having to adapt to change. So, you know, if I think about, you know, technology is evolving, customer expectations are really shifting. Many of us are, you know, really balancing complex things outside in our personal lives. And you know, while our jobs are becoming, I guess, really digitally focused, the real success is actually becoming more human within that. And so for years, I think we've really relied on, you know, expertise as a competitive advantage. But I think today it's balancing adaptability to that compounding pace of change, and communication and trust is going to continue to be, ever so important. When I think about what it means for Wāhine, look, I think, this era of change is about becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if I link it back to the pace of change, it means there's always going to be something to learn, whether it's a new tech, a new challenge. Waiting, I think, for you to be an expert and putting your hand up isn't really a strategy that works anymore. I think what I've observed in finance is that it's the people who stay curious and ask the questions and are willing to have a go are the ones that are actually responding well to this, fast pace of change. So, look, I think for Wāhine, I'd challenge us to back ourselves more. I've seen incredibly capable women, hesitate because they don't feel, that they're 100% ready for understanding the change or the opportunity of the change or moving into that next role. But I've seen, women absolutely outperform once they're in that next role. So I think my advice would be put your hand up, trust in learning something new, and moving away from I'm ready to I'm actually willing to learn is probably my advice there.
Thanks, Olivia. That's great.
Did
you have a key takeaway, or
probably my key takeaway there would be you don't need to feel ready to step forward. Readiness isn't something you achieve before you act. So the learning will come faster than you think once you're in it. That would be my advice.
Fantastic, thank you. Christina, would you like to share some reflections with us?
Kia ora. Thanks everyone for inviting me on this. And first of all, I'm Christina Leung, Deputy Chief Executive, heading up the Auckland office at NZIER, and we also lead membership services. So much of my work involves helping businesses, public sector agencies and industry groups make sense of what's going on in the economy and how what that means in terms of the decisions that they have to make. So if I think about my own career path, it started in the public sector as a grad at the Reserve Bank before moving to the fast-paced world of the dealing floor and working on that treadmill of high-frequency data releases, and then moving into economics consulting, where the work is a lot more varied, and often clients are coming to you with quite ambiguous problems to assess and resolve for them. So each role is quite different, but also each was changes that I was seeking in order to stretch myself. So what I think today's theme in terms of Wāhine navigating that era of change is very apt in terms of the career trajectory that I've been on. Obviously, there's the differentiation between seeking that change and having change happen to you. But I think in terms of building onto what Megan and Olivia has said, that whole being comfortable with change, a lot of that comes down to if you seek changes and always looking for ways to stretch yourself, then it allows you to be more adaptable for when changes happen. And you're more able to think about how you can respond accordingly. So having that, being used to changes through seeking things that stretch yourself, that in turn allows you to be more comfortable when changes happen. So from an economist perspective, if I think about what's going on right now, one of the biggest changes we're seeing is that uncertainty has become more persistent and also overlapping in nature. So if we think about the fact that we're dealing with high inflation, interest rate changes, high cost of living, and also geopolitical uncertainty, and also climate-related disruptions, and obviously technology, which we've all touched on, there are all these things going on, and we're having to deal with a lot of them at the same time. So if we think about how we respond to that, or what we're seeing in response to that, obviously the greater, as we've seen over the history, the greater the degree of uncertainty, then you do tend to see businesses and households hold back on the major decisions, particularly when it comes to spending and investment. So that's a real challenge. And so it presents uncertainty and change presents challenges, but it also presents opportunities. Now, if we also think around over that longer terms. So Megan talked about the demographic shifts. As an economist, I'm really passionate about diversity in economics, and to anyone that listens, I tell them about this Reserve Bank of Australia research that they undertook to look at who were the people that are now studying economics. So increasingly, they found that in Australia, economics was being offered more or being taken up by people that are in the urban areas, in high income, and also predominantly male. Now, why this matters is those that study economics tend to go on into areas of policy making. So if you're having people that are studying economics that are more urban, male, and high income, then you're not going to have the policies that are going to be fit for purpose for the whole population down the track. And we can see this reflected in other professions as well. We often talk about the importance of diversity in healthcare and in legal professions, just so that we're serving the population and the diversity in those populations best. So if I think about what is what we can do in terms of those changes, there's also we're seeing across not just in New Zealand but also globally that bit of a pushback against diversity initiatives. So I feel that in this environment, it's very important when we discuss meritocracy, what lens we're applying when we're thinking about merit. And I do feel that diversity, having that diverse perspective, is a very valuable contribution in terms of how you can add value to whether being on the board or leading a team, being able to come up with policies or things that will be fit for purpose for the people that you're serving. So I think that's quite an important thing that we need to consider when we think about the changes that are happening and how we can respond to them. So for me, a key thing has been, building on what others have said, has been how we can be comfortable with change, recognizing where we can add value with our diverse perspective, and in order so that we can better have better outcomes essentially for the population as the demographics are changing. Thanks.
Thanks, Christina. Samar, would you like to share some reflections with us?
Sure. Thanks, Ingrid. Kia ora, tēnā koutou karua. Thank you all for having me here. I'm really enjoying the discussion and the collaboration. It's very good to hear, and there are probably some of the ideas that I will be discussing haven't been mentioned, but we'll see how that goes. A little bit about myself. I've been working in the tech industry for the last 22 years with focus on technology, strategy, and transformation across different parts of the world, with the last 11 years here in Aotearoa, and currently covering public sector and defense, as you mentioned. I'm also the co-chair for TechWomen, and I've held a few positions on tech and AI startups in New Zealand. It's a big passion and has been always a big passion across different countries as well and regions, to understand how we can have the next generation of Wāhine and technology and have a more balanced workplace and have different perspectives and diverse discussions over the table. This topic today is aligned with a webinar we had yesterday on TechWomen by coincidence, but the focus was resilience, but it was totally attached to the era of change. So if some people were in both events, some of the ideas might sound that they've been mentioned, but they are really worth the discussion. When we are talking about the era of change, I guess the word that comes up and gets highlighted is the word resilience, and that means different things for different people. For me, the word resilience does not mean that you have to be always tough and pretending that there's no challenge that's affecting you. It's about staying grounded, and when things do not go to plan, you acknowledge that change, adapt to it, learn from it, and you understand how to move forward with a purpose. I've learned that resilience basically also that you choose to contribute, you choose to keep being in the game and understand how to move forward and have the help or the support that's required. For the people who don't know much about me, my own story is probably a one big change. From arriving to Aotearoa as a skilled migrant with a 6-month-old baby, carrying resilience is basically a journey. From moving from my family and myself being stateless to building a life and a career here. It's not something that you basically, for me, it's not something that it's a new word and I need to get used to it. To Megan's point, change is constant. It's the way of living. It's not something that we need to basically talk about because it is how life is. It's never the plan. You're very lucky if your life is going to a specific plan. Right. I see this as basically not only sometimes it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to support and to move forward. The changes that I see right now, and it's pretty obvious if we're talking about technology, is the word of the day, which is artificial intelligence and AI. Digital transformation is growing in a very different way. And alongside what we're saying is that well-being and humanity and authentic leadership. It's an opportunity for us to move the world and reform what leadership looks like. When we are talking about AI, this is a new thing that people are not used to in their productivity and performance and how they're building the game. That change gives Wāhine the opportunity to be part of forming that change. I see this as a big opportunity for Wāhines because we finally have that seat on the table and we can form how the future look like. Now, there are many changes, and as the panel has also mentioned, Christina and Olivia, and so there's a lot of local and domestic changes, especially the elections that's coming up. And we're talking about public sector, the financial stress, and of course the geopolitical situation, which presses stress for a big part of the community. The way that I've just mentioned, I said that when we're addressing this with curiosity and we address this with an idea of the data that came with AI, is the data that's built on an environment where Wāhine women were not part of it, but now we have the chance to change that because it's a new way of doing work. So this is the time that we can sit around the table and go, this is how we're going to do it differently and make sure that the data is inclusive. It's basically keeping Wāhine in mind. Redefining leadership will be a major thing in this era. It means that we need to learn how to recognize that change and challenge, learn from it, basically to be focused on control what we can control and understand the things that we can't control in order to move forward. One practical advice from my side is the things that I've learned, basically to make sure that your values and principles are the ones that grounded you. However, by saying this, keep yourself in check. Check those values and principles, because guess what? I know it's a surprise, but they change over time. And when you get older, your perspective to the word value, it's not black and white, basically. It gets grayish over time. So keep yourself on check on what are my values, what's my perspective, and ground yourself. However, the one big advice or practical advice that I give, build your village or tribe deliberately. Have those people that in an era of change, you can go back and say, if I'm doubting myself, or if I feel that this is not the place that I should be, or if it's difficult, is this the right way to be feeling? And have this tribe where they go, no, you can do it. You've been always doing it. Move forward. Build it deliberately. Don't wait for it to happen. Go and hunt for this tribe and build it and be part of that community. If the key takeaway for today, or the thing that I would leave this with is you don't need to navigate this alone. If there's one thing that I'd like people to remember, it's resilience is not about surviving adversity. It's about using those experiences to become stronger, more authentic leader. Your voice, your perspective, your ability to keep learning through that challenge is your greatest leadership strength. But always walk with purpose. I have a friend that we always joke about something, and yesterday it was mentioned as well. Strong leaders, as they say, they're usually carrying a folder and walking with purpose, carry that folder and move towards that purpose. Yeah, that's it from my side.
Thank you, Samar. That's great. Thanks everyone for sharing your reflections. I think we've had a really great range of thoughtful and considered perspectives from each of you and from your various fields. So now we'll move into like more of a panel discussion where we will have a few questions that we have prepared. We can see who wants to maybe answer if they feel very strongly about it first, or I can pick somebody. So the first question, you've all touched on what's happening in terms of change right now in your respective field, but what is one change you're seeing right now that people should really be paying more attention to? Would anybody like to? Christina?
Ingrid, will you repeat the question because my network
Oh, sure. What is one change you are seeing right now that people should be paying more attention to?
So I'll have a go. AI, I would say, is the obvious one. However, we have, I'm sure, been paying a lot of attention to it, as we've all discussed. I think a lot of it comes down to, in terms of the type of attention, I feel we, as a nation, it needs to be more intentional about how we use this technology, because it is, as we've talked about, still an emergent technology. So everyone is trying it out in different ways, which is all well and good. It's what you would expect with any technology. However, if we're wanting to make it really reap the productivity rewards that is meant to be there from it, then we should have a more cohesive and nationwide strategy of how we want this to look. For example, even the fact we talk about the disruptions to the workforce, the loss of entry-level jobs because of the use of AI instead. So it then comes down to what does our education system need to look like. The reality is those entry-level jobs that are disappearing because it's being replaced by AI, this will probably be shifting to what education needs to be in how AI is being used, so that graduates will come out fully formed using AI as a tool rather than thinking about the fact that it's displacing jobs. So the change is these disruptions that are happening to the workforce. As with any transition, often transitions are painful, especially at the start. And I think we need to think as a nation, if we want to be reaping these rewards for everyone, that inclusive growth, how we are wanting from education all the way to developing a workforce that's future ready to have these changes, and what, as a nation, what we should be doing to make sure it happens in a way that's going to minimise the pain for everyone.
So building on what each of you has said as well, and for me, there's something about changing the way we build resilient, adaptable human beings to face into, the future that we don't even know yet really what it will be like. And I think you're right, Christina, just thinking about what education means this century.
Great, thank you. I think, a really important part, AI is part of our day. I have 12-year-old twins who are, they're learning a lot constantly, and just adding another layer like that into their day and wondering what they will end up doing when they're older is something that is constantly on my mind. So I think a really valid point there, Christina, that and something we should really be paying more attention to. We have another question really around what do you think Wāhine often underestimate during times of change? A few of you touched on that in your reflections, but this is something additional that you'd like to add to that. Perhaps, Olivia, you might have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, this is just from my perspective here, but I think that we can really underestimate the value of how Wāhine think. I think it's probably important to note at times that knowledge can go out of date quickly, but that doesn't mean judgment does, right? And so I think it is about leaning into our own instincts with timing, and that reality of our own intuition is actually going to be that critical decisions making skill during times of uncertainty. Yeah, that's what I feel very deeply about.
Did anyone else want to add to what Olivia's said around that particular question?
I'm happy to build on that. I think we tend to underestimate also, or like what happens when we stop competing with each other and start advocating for each other loudly and support each other. The same things that most of Wāhine's, I don't want to say complain about, but struggle with, are the things that we can see that our colleagues and the other Wāhine's in the room are struggling with. It's if we're standing up for that and having the discussion and the support for each other, and giving the space, we actively pull each other up and we pull each other through those challenges. We are way stronger when we allow ourselves to believe and to be supportive of each other, and we notice that challenge in others.
Fantastic, really nice addition there, Samar. With that in mind, and working through things, what's one practical thing that we could be doing in the next, in the short term, in the next 30 days, to help us feel more prepared or more in control during uncertain times? Megan, do you have any thoughts on that?
I think inform yourself, understand the change. It's hard to have any sense of control if something just feels like it's flying at you, or it's a black box, or you don't understand it. So trying to understand what it's about and the why behind it can help you to then think about how you feel about it in yourself, and that is you starting to take a bit of personal control for your reaction to it. You can't control the change. The one thing each of us can control is our reaction.
Yeah, so building on that, I would say that whole curiosity piece is very important, as we've discussed earlier on, like that staying curious so that when changes are happening, you're able to assess and in terms of how you might want to respond accordingly to change. For me, I think constantly seeking ways to stretch yourself so that when change happens, it's not so much of a shock to the system, because you're already having changes happen constantly, so that it's just another thing that you're responding to, rather than having this really big thing that you have to grapple with in one go.
Yeah, I might just add to that as well, that I think when, things feel overwhelming, try to look at reducing the horizon of it. So instead of trying to map out, everything, start to build more clarity within your own next step. So that might be as simple as, asking yourself, well, what do I need to do this week? What decision is in front of me, right now? And then to, what the other ladies have just spoken about, really asking yourself, well, what is within my control? And what am I giving, too much noise to when trying to really prepare and be more in control?
That's great. In my role here at ACC, I look after our superannuation product, Mysuper. We have obviously a constantly changing environment, fluctuating investment markets, membership, lots of things change on a day-to-day basis. One thing that I have seen a lot more of is our members increasing their engagement and how the products work that we're offering to them, how markets are working, and I think sometimes taking that control where you can, simplifying the process, being aware of what you're involved in, engaging in, can really provide that space to sort of take time to go, right, I need to take a simpler approach to this and not just look at that end goal like you were mentioning, Olivia. It's not just about what's happening at the very end. You've got to sort of run the race before you get to the end product, and it's okay to take your time. It's okay to take smaller steps and simplify things. Yeah, it's great. So we have another question for you. How do you make good decisions when the future feels uncertain for you? And that could be in your day-to-day at work or your personal life.
So as an economist, we do a lot of scenario planning for clients in terms of modelling of different scenarios that might pan out, but just with the nature of, obviously, we're the first to say we don't know exactly how things will pan out. Let's face it, if we did, probably wouldn't need to be working. So a lot of it is down to what's the central scenario, and then from that, where the balance of risk lies and how we should respond accordingly based on what could happen in the different scenarios. So I think having a sense of where the risks lie, what are your parameters in terms of risk tolerance, and then from that, how you might want to respond accordingly. Being prepared and thinking about it in that wider context is often helpful when you're in times of uncertainty.
Yeah, and I mean, we rarely have perfect info. Sorry, Samar. I was just going to say, we rarely have perfect information about anything, and sometimes just making that first decision, the first step, can at least get you moving, and because you don't want to get stuck either for lack of enough information to make the long decision. I'm a big fan of the how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And when it's all a bit overwhelming, that can be quite a useful thing.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. What I was going to say is very aligned. It's just one foot in front of the other, basically. It becomes very overwhelming, and I can assure you, in a tech industry, no matter what kind of scenario you put on the table and how much data you have, somehow you end up with a new thing that you didn't realize is even possible. And that's very constant. It's the way of living in the industry. But it's always, I think, take your time to digest it, have all your emotions, but then park them and go, all right, these are the things I can't control. And it's just one foot in front of the other. It's exactly one bite of the elephant. And over time, you'll see yourself that you're just managing through.
That's great. I think this question would be great to hear from all of you. And it's really just to get an idea of what has helped you personally stay grounded during periods of significant change. So maybe, Samar, we could start with you and go around to everybody.
Yeah, happy to. In my case, it's a combination of probably the things that I've mentioned is purpose and people. There is many times, countless, I can't even give you a number, where I have to sit myself down and remind myself with the purpose, what I'm trying to do, what's the big picture, where are we at, and remind myself, this is what you've decided basically to contribute, to be part of that, and that's your purpose. However, that alone is not enough. We have to be humble enough to understand that we actually need people, and that's not weakness, it's a strength. And people are the best thing in this equation. It's your tribe, right? It's exactly what we do. That's why I find the TechWomen discussions and the webinars and events are empowering to me. While people come to us for advice, we're part of it. I like hearing those stories from others because they build us up, and you feel that you're not alone, and it pushes you forward every time. Look, I have also a young son. He's 11, and I can't for people who have kids, and especially boys, I have no idea what tomorrow's going to bring. It's with him, it's like a surprise party every day. There's a new idea, I don't know, a new attitude and behavior, and surely not something that I could have planned for. Let's put it this way, it's chaos. The basic is you keep yourself grounded, you remind yourself with a higher purpose, and don't be harsh on yourself. There are way, way more people in the same journey. It's the purpose and the people.
Yeah, I agree with that in terms of the importance of people and connections. Also, from a pragmatic perspective, personally, I find exercise very important to me. When I'm active, physically active, then I find my mind is healthier and I'm more feel more able to deal with things that come my way. So when I don't exercise, I definitely feel it in my mind in terms of everything is just not quite right. So to me, I make sure to get my exercise in, whether it's even if it's just a walk, but usually if it's more active or strength training. So anything that makes me physically well also makes my mind better too, I feel.
Yeah, and you know, I think part of what that does, Christina, is it helps you to keep things in perspective, because it can become a bit all-consuming. You can get really caught up in the thing that you're dealing with, and lose a bit of that. Well, I'm speaking for myself here, as you know, can lose a bit of that wider perspective. And I do think having a sense of humour is also quite useful. Sometimes you've just got to sort of laugh either at the situation or yourself, or the funny thing that you know, one of your kids sends you on your phone to try and cheer you up, and that's really important. Just keep that perspective.
Yeah, look, I would agree absolutely with every sentiment and everything that everyone said on the call today. I think for me, it's really looking for those things that fill my cup. So, you know, finding that deep meaning within the work I'm doing and the ripple impact that is had on either people's, you know, lives or people's growth or the communities that we represent. I would also think, you know, for me, you know, when I've had a bad day, it's that well-being, right? It's the exercise, it's reading a book, it's the simple, practical things. And you know, one thing I recently got in the habit of is, you know, it's quite easy to stay in that, you know, downward spiral when you've had a bad day. So I try to flip it, and I try to come home and talk to my husband around, okay, well, what were the 5 top things that actually was a small win today and worked well today? And by the time I get to the 6th thing, which is probably the more what didn't work so well in my day, actually I feel like the weight has been lifted off my shoulders, and that doesn't feel as important. So yeah, really focusing on those small wins, you know, keeps me grounded and listening to my own internal values as well.
It's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. So one last question for the panel before we go into questions from our audience. What gives you confidence about the future, even in uncertain times?
For me, it's young people, and young's a loose term, people younger than me. Yeah, that's my simple answer.
I would say also thinking about the changes that we have dealt with already and we've come up the other end, then that makes me think, well, if we've managed to come out the other end from those, then we can like deal with the things that do come our way over the coming years.
Yes.
Look, from my side, I've saw a lot of progress, and I'm really optimistic about the future. From the time I've started my career, that's a really big change, and also big change across countries, but also a big change from 11 years ago in New Zealand. The discussion has shifted, and you can see that there's a lot of the younger generation, actually the children, they don't see the idea of, for example, why we are talking, like, my son doesn't understand when I say, oh, I have a woman leadership or something like this. He looks at me funny going, why is it for women? And I'm very, very optimistic that one day we're going to disestablish all the women related only, for example, groups, because it will be, you know, has equity. So everyone can actually have their place where they're supported without us being pushing it. So I'm really optimistic that the young generation can't see it, and it's perfect. Can we keep them that way?
That's awesome. Thank you very much. So I think we'll see if, thank you to our delightful panel. They've had some really great insights there, and it's nice to hear some of those, some of the things that you're all mentioning pollinate across the group, and they're things that I resonate that resonate with me on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's quite inspiring to hear that as women or Wāhine, we're here to support each other, and we're all going through very similar things. And you know, sometimes it might just take talking to someone to get some insights into how to handle the change, maybe, you know, look at it with a different lens as well. So Emma and Amy, do we have some questions in the chat that we would like to put forward to our panel?
Yeah, I've got one from Katie that I think is quite good.
Okay, did you want to ask that?
Yeah, so she's asked, if you have been trying to implement things to help with the ease of change or to create change, and these have been turned down, how would you as a leader approach this? If you have any examples, she would love to hear them.
So Emma, was that if your change idea gets
if you've been trying to implement things, to help with the ease of change, I guess, or to create change, and these have been turned down, how do you deal with it, or how do you approach it?
I think having buy-in is very important. If you want to have implement change, you need to bring the people with you. And so if it's been turned down, it comes back to that curiosity piece. Why that resistance, and what if from a rational perspective, what is it for them for that change? So respond to that that rational piece, like why that change, in order to get that buy-in, why that change, how that would, for example, hopefully make their life easier, or even if not, then think about how you would get that buy-in in terms of how that change will affect them, and where the concerns are that could be driving that resistance and pushback, and how you might think about ways that even if it might mean tinkering with that change, so that you can get that buy-in. That's how I would respond.
Awesome. Thanks, Christina. Did anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just expanding on that too. It's good to, like, initially you might be a bit annoyed, you go, oh, but then if you sort of look back and look at, you know, ask why, you know, find out what it was about it so you can learn from it. And if it is just about not having gotten buy-in for it, you can address that. If it's because there wasn't an understanding of the problem, then maybe you've got to go back a few steps and make sure that people are understanding what you're seeing as the problem. So I think learn from it. I mean, it's, you know, it's as certain as change is that sometimes the things you want to do won't get the agreement. And so just, you know, learn from it and sort of come back to some of the things we've said, is go back to what's in your control.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think I see it in both ways, right? The first one is building on both answers, is to understand the purpose and motivation of the person or the entity that you're talking to, because probably it doesn't fit. Like probably their purpose or motivation or what they're trying to achieve just cannot fit that answer, and they didn't articulate it in that way other than it's a no. But also the other part is I would keep my idea in check. Once I understand how they're thinking about it, I would also check if my idea or my suggestion was the right suggestion for that time. It could be needing development. It could be not the right time for it. So I would be also like not critical in one direction, and probably critical is not the right word, but I will be in check to understand what's the right time, what's the right way to do it, is this the right person, and have the understanding and at least the patience and the ability to check both sides.
I'd probably just add to that as well, if you are able to, sometimes bringing people along, early engagement of the change can be really important. And sometimes people that are a little bit resistant to it become the biggest advocates because they feel that they have a lot of value to add and tell that story as well, because they absolutely then begin to understand more of the why and the wider impact that the change can have. So that would just be my little add on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm just checking Katie says, thank you so much for your responses, all of you.
Emma, there's a really great question from Millie there about digital change and the divide. So we could maybe look at that one for the panel.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm just scrolling up. If you have it, Ingrid, do you want to say
Yeah,
it?
sure,
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it.
Millie's just said that that they're interested in how these digital changes affect communities where the digital divide is a serious challenge and how that affects Wāhine intentionally and meaningfully, keeping up with digital advances and their ability to have access to opportunities for themselves and their whānau. I was wondering if anyone had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is power. So the more everyone can be educated on have the digital skills to be included and part of this change, then the better. A lot of that, I believe, starts with education at schools so that everyone is on a level playing field. Obviously, there's going to be changes constantly evolving when it comes to technology. So it's about how do we have allow that upskilling, enable people in the workforce beyond once they've come out of school to continue to maintain those digital skills to keep up with that evolving technology. I think platforms that make information accessible to different demographics, whether it's Reels, TikTok videos that can make it easier to digest for some sections of the population, all the way to something that people can look up and read. So I think having access to knowledge and information so that people can readily upskill and keep up with that, the evolving technology. I feel that's I absolutely agree. That whole digital inclusion piece is a very important part of the picture if we want to be capturing those productivity gains from technological changes.
Agree.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Emma, do we have time for one more question, do we think? Or
Yep, Amy's giving me the
Amy's
thumbs
giving me the
up.
thumbs
Yep.
up. Okay.
There was one specifically for Megan.
Yes.
Yeah, what advice does she have for us in ACC with the upcoming change in leadership and potentially changes in government while navigating the changes that have and will continue to come from the turnaround plan? Yeah, if you have anything for that, Megan.
Yeah, and Emma, other panelists will no doubt have views on this as well, because we've all been through these scenarios.
Yeah.
But look, I think that the messages, the themes from this conversation are those themes. There's some change that will go on around ACC that isn't in any of our control, but you know your purpose, you know the work you do matters, you know the things that are directly in your control, and you know our purpose at ACC is really clear. The message I've given as well is, you know, we've got really strong board and minister support for our strategy, our turnaround plan. So be confident that that is understood and valued.
Awesome. Thank you. And did anyone else have anything to add more generally, I guess, if you've dealt with that in your careers?
I think it's just building on that piece that change is the only constant. There will always be changes. So seeking ways to stretch yourself so that you can be more prepared to respond to changes when they happen, so that you feel you have agency over your situation. I feel that's quite important.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I also like the idea that I think the saying is be the thermostat, not the thermometer. So basically you can control, like you guys said before, about you can control your own reaction, but you can't control, you know, maybe the change that's happening or anything like that. Awesome. Thank you so much. I think that's it on the questions. Are we passing over to Amy, Ingrid?
I think so. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you to the panel. It's been great.
Namahe nui, Ingrid, and thank you so much for getting today's kōrero, and heartfelt thank you to Megan, Olivia, Christina, and Samar for sharing your time and your insights with us. 1 hour really gone very quickly, and I think it's says a lot about the richness of today's conversation. I do encourage you take one insight from today and turn into one small action, like our speakers mentioned. Maybe review a goal, asking questions, start a conversation, building a community. And simply giving yourself permission to back yourself a little bit more. To everyone joining us today, and thank you so much for making the time. I know calendars are full and many people are balancing a lot, so we really appreciate you being part of this session. A sincere thank you again to our incredible speakers, to Ingrid, our MC, Emma, my co-lead, and everyone who helped bring this event together. We hope you leave today feel more confident and more connected and more ready to navigate change in your own way. Namahe nui, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.